I'm Dr. Annadale, and the photo you see here is the header for my public Facebook page. And I figured since it's public, I could do a quick video explaining what's going on in this classroom, what I've written on the board, and why. So let's begin. I'll zoom in a little bit and focus on the right side of the board. So over here we see a younger version of myself, and what I've written on the board is the agenda for today's class. Aquinas. First, his writing style. Second, grace perfects nature, an important theme in Aquinas. And lastly, is philosophy sufficient for salvation? Philosophy as opposed to theology and faith. So the rest of what's on the board concerns this first question, Aquinas' writing style. Let's take a look. Over here at the left side of the board, I've noted that Aquinas, in the passages we're reading, always begins his entry with a question. It's almost always a yes or no question. Is God simple? Is philosophy sufficient for salvation? Then he gives us arguments for one answer. It would seem that God is simple. It would seem that philosophy is sufficient. And then arguments for the other answer, since the yes or no question has two answers. On the contrary, it seems that God is not simple, or it seems that God is simple. It seems that philosophy is not sufficient for salvation and that faith is needed besides. Then he gives us the crucial bit, Aquinas' own answer or solution to the problem, in which he will often make some kind of philosophical distinction or share some critical philosophical insight with the reader, something that unlocks the entire issue and allows us to see it in a new way. And then finally, he concludes each article with his reply to the arguments that have been given previously in section 1, against the first argument, against the second argument, etc. What's in the middle of the board here is the result of some brainstorming with my class about his reasons for including the first two parts. Why, before giving us his answer, has he given us arguments on one side and arguments on the other side? And here's what we came up with this particular time. First, so that we can learn with him as we walk through the argument, we go through the process of thinking through the entire issue from every side, and then arriving, perhaps if we agree with Aquinas, at the solution that he suggests. It also allows us to overcome bias, because we must know both sides of the argument. It allows Aquinas to demonstrate that he knows both sides of the argument. And this would include also confirmation bias, this very deadly intellectual habit of only reading arguments that you already agree with. This is deadly for any kind of critical spirit and inquiry, so we want to avoid that. Aquinas helps us to avoid that by giving us the arguments on opposed sides first. He also shows his authority. He shows us that he's thought through the issue and can be taken seriously, not just as an advocate, but as a critical thinker. He gives context for his answer. By the time we've read through multiple arguments on both sides of the issue, we're prepared to hear Aquinas' more sophisticated take involving his key insight. Without that context, we would struggle maybe to understand part of what he wants to teach us. It also allows him to refute these arguments later in the final section. So arguments that he presents at one part of the article, he will be able to refute effectively at the end of the article. And it requires him to give his best argument. It's a kind of best practices in intellectual and philosophical argumentation to challenge himself with the best arguments on the other side of the issue before presenting his own argument. His argument has to be even stronger than those in order to be persuasive for the reader, and the reader knows it. Everything is above board. You don't try to pull punches when you're reading or writing as Thomas Aquinas. So that's a quick look at this photograph from the header page of my Facebook. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.